Welcome to Entreprogrammers Podcast, the podcast for developreneurs, the podcast where you get to be a fly on the wall listening to real conversations of three developers trying to tackle the challenges they face as entrepreneurs.
All right, we're live.
Yay!
It's almost Christmas time.
It is.
My wife says it's cookie day.
Cookie day.
Yeah.
Nice.
I bought my youngest a foam hatchet, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. He
buy him a foam gun. Those are dangerous.
we got last year. We got the other two, these foam hatchets, and they've become like the main toy that both of them play with. So the youngest got super jealous, so now he's going to have his own.
Oh, there you go.
This will probably result in a hospital trip for my wife. So she'll be sitting on the couch or something, and then like one of them will sneak up on her and
At least you're teaching them to whack each other with sharp objects instead of shoot each other with fast-moving projectiles.
Yes.
Because it makes a difference.
Death is slower that way.
Oh man!
So Chuck, did you end up eliminating that person that couldn't book their appointment right?
I had eliminated them before I asked you. So
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think I'm gonna be a little more lenient in the future. I don't feel like I can go back to them and go, you know what? I changed my mind.
Did you tell them why you did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What software were you using for that? I'm curious.
Schedule Once.
Schedule Once. Okay. So did they book? Did they just do? So did they book an hour and then go, oh crap, and then go back and book another half hour? Is that?
Nope. It was two different people. It was two different people. One booked a half hour and the other booked an hour, and they told them to book an hour and a half.
Oh, okay. I got you.
And I was
That's interesting.
I was like, look, I want somebody who's going to write my instructions and then be able to follow my instructions. So.
Yeah. That's definitely kind of borderline for me.
Yeah, it was really borderline, and that's why I was asking, because I was like,
I think before making that decision, I probably would have gone and looked at maybe you did this, but I would have looked at the page where they were actually supposed to do that and see if there was any reasonable human being would be able to not, like, if there's something in the UI that would make it easy to do that by accident.
You know, like the part where you get in there, it asks you your time zone, and then it pops up and says, how long should this appointment be? And gives you a drop down, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour, hour and a half to 2 hours.
That's pretty easy.
And you can't select the right one.
Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty darn easy.
That part?
So, yeah, that part. All right. Cool. Yeah. No.
Oh, and the phone screens, it's amazing how easy people are making it for me to eliminate them. I actually got an email from somebody yesterday, and she was all ticked off. I set aside for your phone call, and you never called. And I emailed her back, and I said, I called you twice. Here's the number that you put into the system. Yeah, it was totally wrong.
Nice.
I had another guy. This is the best one. He was at Walgreens when I called, and I couldn't tell. I couldn't hear any noise in the store or anything.
Yeah.
But we're about 5 minutes in. I had asked him the second question, and he goes, "Can you hold on for a minute so I can check out at Walgreens?"
What?
And I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't have time. I said, these calls take up the 15 minutes, and I'm scheduled back to back for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be easier if I could go home and call you from my home office. And I'm like, then why the hell aren't you in your home office? And then,
diabetes. I got to get medication for my diabetes.
So then he goes, I don't think this is going to work out. And then he just hung up on me. I was floored. I'm like, I guess you don't need the work, do you?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, yeah, again, the theme of anyone who the bar is so low. I mean, for crying out loud.
Well, remember, here's something you have to consider too, Chuck. You're hiring for a work from home job, okay?
Yeah.
It's not the same thing as hiring a remote software developer. Very, very different. You'll get some of the overlap there, but work from home job to most people who are not like highly skilled is like, oh, free money.
It's just, I'm just glad I spent
the lowest of the low.
I'm just glad I spent 5 minutes on the phone with that idiot. You know, I had another guy tell me that, you know, because I asked him what they're good at and then what they're not good at. And he's like, well, I tend to procrastinate stuff. I'm like, it says right in the description, I have a bunch of tasks that I need done on a regular basis that need to be done on time. Yeah, sorry, no. But yeah, it's, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking for an A++ player.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're telling me you're not an A++ player, I'm just glad I spent 10 minutes on the phone with you instead of an hour.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's right. That's what you have to do. Like I said, I mean, it's about putting the right people on the bus. Yeah.
But it sucks being on the phone all day. Because I've been on the phone all day for about 2 weeks, like all afternoon for days on end.
If you're anything like me, as far as being an introvert, that is extremely taxing too. Like for me, just having one call with someone just kind of stresses me out for most of the day. So I can't imagine doing 20 or 30 of them back to back.
Yeah, the most I've done in one run is I've had 10 or 15. I think it was like 12 I had lined up back to back to back to back. And granted, 1 or 2 of them didn't show up right in the middle. So
right.
It's like, why did you even schedule time? But yeah, and then I did my first in-depth interview yesterday, and oh my gosh, I had to restrain myself from saying, "Do you want the job?"
That's good. See, this is good.
Yep. So I have another interview this afternoon. This one's online over Skype or something. And then I have 2 in person on Monday. Because if they live in Utah, I've been saying, hey, let's meet in person. So I'm meeting somebody 10 minutes from my house and then somebody else in downtown Salt Lake because they live up north of Salt Lake. But yeah, hiring's tough, but at the same time, it's becoming more and more apparent that some of these people are really cut out for it, and some of these people really aren't.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool.
But yeah. So yeah, if you're doing phone screenings, don't tell them you're a procrastinator. And don't hang up on them after you can't check out at Walgreens.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
But yeah, and then I also automated a whole bunch of stuff for sponsors. So I have a sponsorship success form, and it asks them a whole bunch of questions like, what are the benefits of your product? What are the features of your product? And there's a whole explanation. You know, benefits are why people want the features or why people are buying the product. You know, they want more time, they want more money, they think it'll, you know, make their life easier, make their boss happier. And then the features are, you know, if it's continuous integration, it's, you know, we run Docker and we run Ruby and we run JavaScript, and then ask for success stories and testimonials and then just other notes. And I sent that out to all of the people who are currently sponsoring shows. And yeah, so I'm hoping to get some responses back on that. And then I also set it up so that they can just upload their banners to WordPress, and then I can just stick them in place.
Oh, that's cool.
Instead of them emailing me and then going, oh yeah, well, we got to do this, and then I got to upload them again, and yeah, forget that. So I'm excited about all of it because it just takes that much more load off of me.
Nice.
Automation,
Speaking of employees, I got to say, Josh, Aaron is insanely good.
I know.
Josh found this guy, and we've been using him as simple programmer. Josh was using him for his stuff. And I mean, the dude, like, I did a book post on 72 books I read this year. And what I did was I recorded a video of it, and Rodrigo went through and he put in all the links for the books and stuff. And then we had Aaron do like the blog post from the video. And I thought, okay, let's just let him like crack through this, and then I'll go and I'll correct all the, you know, all descriptions. And he basically like did better summaries than I would have of what I like, right. And then he was like, he sent me the draft, and I had no corrections, basically, just like he misspelled Grant
nice.
Cardone, right? And so I fixed that, and then he says, okay, so now I'm going to put it in the WordPress. Do you want me to put some images, and also should I, organize it by category? I came up with these categories. So he came up with like 6 categories of the kinds of books that I read, and I was thinking for images, like normally when I do these posts, I pick out like 4 or 5 books because it's just too much work to try and get the Amazon the cover for everything for 72 books, and I was like, well, sure, what the hell, I'll tell him yes. So, and he'll come back like half an hour later and be like, are you sure you want it for all of them? And I'm just looking at the draft he sent me now, which was like done in like he got this done like 24 hours later, right? And it's like perfectly formatted, all organized, image for every single one of the 72 books.
Yep.
And the images link to the actual short link. So if you click the image, so he linked up the images as well. So yeah,
that's interesting. How do you keep track of that? Because that would be an interesting thing to.
As far as what,
like, interesting to go through, like which books you've read.
Oh, the way I do it is I do a combination of things. One of them is that I just look at my Audible account, because most of them I'm listening to the audiobooks, and I just sort it by year, all the books I purchased for that year. And then I do the same thing with my Kindle account. Yes. And so, I just find all the books I purchase, because I really don't purchase books and then not read them. I know that's rare in the world. And then if I remember any paper books that I hardly ever read any paper books, so there's usually not very many of them. But
right. Huh. I should make a list like that. Do you leave do you listen to any fiction or read any fiction? Do you leave that in there too?
I do. I don't listen to much. I think the only fiction I listened to this year, I did Snow Crash finally, and
that's Neil Stevenson, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I read that. I'm not really a fan of. I've read like 1 or 2 of his books, and I don't know. It just doesn't really work for me.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan. Like everyone's like Snow Crash. It's the best fiction book for software developers, right? Like that's what everyone kind of.
Oh, that's the one with the terrorists, right?
Snow Crash is the one where the guy is like this kind of samurai. He hacks into there's the metaverse, and there's like he's a pizza delivery guy at the beginning.
You know what I didn't like about that book was it was not very realistic. Like it was futuristic, and it's kind of lame. It's like it was kind of about hacker, but it was so futuristic that it didn't have like any real appeal to me as a computer nerd.
Yeah. It was weird too. It's like it contained a lot of like it was interesting, like neuro-linguistic, like basically it combined a bunch of things from like the history of religion and like Ashra, worship, and like how this all kind of wove into like the Sumerian language being like the low level of programming for the brain, the language processing system of the brain, and all this stuff. But like there were points in the book where he like explains the whole thing twice. Right? Not in the dialogue, but just like, here we go. It's time for me to explain the entire thing like the shittiest writer ever, right? Like, I mean, I know people love this book, but it's true. If you watch a movie or you watch a play or you read a book, and the whole thing has to be explained by a character where they diatribe out, then it's a failure. It's like an artistic failure. So. That at least that's my opinion on it.
It's like the joke that you have to explain.
Yeah, it was an interesting book. It was weird too. There was like a 15-year-old like girl that was like this weird like there was like a sex scene in the book with her, and it was like it's kind of like that's I don't know. That's why is she got like I understand like sure fine, but why is she got to be 15? That's just a little bit like weird, but. It wasn't a horrible book. I mean, but I don't think I think also, what's interesting about the book though, is I'm reading the book now, right? This book was written in what, like 93, 94, somewhere around like early 90s. Now at that time, the ideas in this book would have been much more this book probably impacted a lot of technology today, right?
Yeah, that's like pre-Matrix, right? I mean, it's interesting. It's a very different cultural frame of reference people would have had.
Exactly. So when we look at the book today, it's not as so. I think, and that's the whole thing. It's like that's what makes art, right? It's not what it looks like. I mean, for the most part, it's the historical significance of the thing that happened, right? That there's artists today that paint are better than artists of yesteryear who are famous artists, but it's because of the transformation in the thinking that occurred from that particular artist's type of painting and how it transformed art that makes it famous and makes it expensive art. And it's the same thing I think with literature in that sense. So it changed the way that I think a lot of technologists thought about the world, like this idea of a metaverse, this idea of, I think that was pretty unique to that book. So
yeah.
But yeah, I read that one, Ender's Game, and then I'm reading Narnia to my daughter.
Oh, so. I'm doing that too. Actually, I just started. I'm reading the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to my kids, and it's really funny because we were alternating between reading just like a picture book, and then sometimes we do like a YouTube videos at bedtime. So they'd pick out like a little Legos Star Wars video on YouTube, and we'd watch that. Well, with this now, they are every night they're kind of like, oh, we want to watch YouTube videos, but then we get 2 minutes into the book and they're grilling me with questions, and then we stop after one chapter, which to me is a merciful release because I get a question about every half paragraph or so.
Yeah.
I just get grilled. But
you do voices? You have to do voices when you read Narnia.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I'm not great at the voices, and I don't really get.
I'm not either, but my kids like it.
Well, I've been shouting loudly for the witch, which terrifies my middle son.
Nice.
Yeah, but yeah, it's pretty funny though because they'll get really into it. Then we'll stop at the end of the chapter, and they'll want to keep going, and I'll be like, sorry, nope, we got to stop.
Did you do Magician's Nephew first? Or are you doing?
No, I'm doing them in the order that they were written. So
okay, yeah. I'm doing chronological.
We did Magician's Nephew first. We finished Last Battle last month. So. Oh
man, I didn't. this is funny. I know. Actually, my brother is doing it too. So that's pretty funny.
That's funny.
I can make some people's heads explode because now I'm reading the kids Rush Revere's the Rush Revere books where he goes back in time and does historical stuff.
Yep.
I read them the one about the Pilgrims, and now I'm reading them the one about the stuff that led into the Revolutionary War, and people's heads explode. You're reading your kids Rush Limbaugh? I'm like, they're fun historical books. Give me a break. But apparently you can't like Rush Limbaugh and you can't not hate Donald Trump because then people get mad at you.
Yes. Tell me about it. Oh my God.
Seriously. I put some stuff on I posted one thing on Twitter. I'm still getting crap about it. The picture with me wearing a Make America Great Again hat in front of Trump Tower because I was in New York. I thought it'd be funny. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's so offensive to support the president-elect of the United States.
Well, and I'm just like, look, I didn't vote for the guy. I don't particularly even like the guy, but I thought it'd be funny. And people went straight from that to racist, and I'm just like, wait, I am failing to make that connection.
Here's something for them. Have them look up the definition of bigot. I didn't make it up. Just have them look up the definition of bigot and see if they qualify or not. So.
There's plenty of that on both sides, in my opinion. But it's funny to me that people go immediately from you don't agree with me socially to you must be a horrible person. And I see people on the right do it to people on the left too. But it's like, hey, if somebody holds an opinion that you don't understand or that you don't agree with, why not just say, look, if you really care, Just be like, hey, you know, that surprises me a little bit that you would support Trump, or that you would, you know, that you had, you know, you felt like you could vote for Hillary or whatever, you know. And I'd love to learn why.
Right.
But for most people, if they have an opinion that's different from mine, I don't have the time or inclination to really, you know, care. If they're a good friend of mine, I'll have the conversation with them. But, you know, just Joe Stranger out there, whatever.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, yeah, that's like people just jump all over the assuming quite a bit just based on this. It's really like shame. There's a book, actually, one of the books I read this year is John Mills On Liberty, which is a book that every person should read. If you haven't read it, it's usually assigned in political science class at the.
Yeah, I either read it or read excerpts from it.
But people ignore the shit out of the book, especially professors in political science class, because the whole book basically says, look, the only way you're going to have liberty is if you have the KKK. And essentially, you know, that's essentially what the book means. Is like, look, there's a lot of ideas that people have that are racist, bigot, whatever. You might think that they are, right? And you don't know because over time, what was sacrilegious, like you look at the church, right? What was heretic, right? Which there was no difference between government. And this is, you know, coming from an English standpoint because a writer, you know, at that time, but those things are now the opposite. And the same thing has happened in the US, right? But like, so you can't really judge, because at that time, because like right now we say, oh, if you're Trump supporter, you're bigot, you're a racist, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
Say all those things. But if 100 years ago you held that perspective, you said, okay, everyone who doesn't, this is what the social norm is, and if you don't agree with this, you're an outcast, and we're not even humanized. We're never going to hear your crap, your rhetoric. We don't even want to hear it because it's racist, it's bigot, it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It's nonsense. We don't need to hear nonsense. So we're just going to tell you to go fuck yourself, and we're not going to listen to you. If you were that 100 years ago, you'd be supporting segregation and lesser rights for women, and you know, you wouldn't be supporting, right? All those things were they weren't just like they were accepted. This was like the way it was. That's how people thought, like the same way that they feel about against anti-Trump today. And so it kind of paints this picture like, look, in order to have real liberty, you have to like accept these viewpoints, like, and dialogue them. And if you stop doing that, you become, in fact, you know, no offense to China, but you become, there's a reason why China basically didn't advance culturally and economically for a good 100 years. And it was because they were all the same, because they quashed any kind of counter viewpoint, right? And they still do it to some degree, not at that level, but it stunted their growth completely, culturally, developmentally, technologically, and financially. And they got behind. They should have been a major world power way back when, and it was because of this. And so, you know, you may not like the KKK, but you absolutely, in order to have liberty, you cannot destroy them and say, oh, you can't talk, you can't have a platform, you can't speak. They have to, you know, otherwise your own arguments against that don't get exercised and they become worthless. And it's just such a, like, when you go through that book, like, it's like, okay, this is, I don't know. I feel like a bunch of millennials need to read that book.
The way I see it is that everybody's going to have someone that thinks they're wrong.
Right.
And so if we go around shutting down people's right to speak because they're wrong, even if they are wrong,
yeah,
then what's to keep the people who think you're wrong from eventually getting around to you? And so, you know, I support their right to speak. I also support my right to speak and tell them they're wrong.
Sure, exactly. and that's that's healthy dialogue, right? But it's dialoguing on the viewpoint, not on the character of the person, right? Because you can't, you know, you have to have those historically we've had people that were so against the grain that were, I mean, you know, persecuted, martyred for ideas. I mean, just look at like in the realm of science, right? Even if you don't want to take it to politics, right? Like if you didn't have people like Galileo, if you didn't have people like Copernicus, if you didn't have people like Newton, or you know, there's a lot of things that were heretical that, you know, that I mean, Da Vinci, like dissecting corpses, and you know, it's like there's a ton of stuff that would have been totally, like 99% of the population would have said, no, this guy's a lunatic, he's wrong, we shouldn't even listen to him, we should just burn him. And they did sometimes, and you know, but he was right. So
so I'm going to bring I want to ask a question of you guys, bring it back around to business and stuff, which we ostensibly are here to talk about.
You started it, Chuck.
I did. It's my fault. I apologize. Dear listener, I apologize. But I'm curious, how do you guys plan out, like we're getting close to the beginning of the year, and I tend to plan things in like 3-month chunks, but how do you guys do planning? Like how do you decide what you're going to do next year, or do you just kind of make it up as you go?
You got the parts ready?
Yeah, it's been pretty make it up as we go for us to this point. So that's something we'd like to correct, I think.
Well, I think this is, I mean, here's the thing, like business changes quickly and priorities change. Mm-hmm. So I've always thought this, like you come up with the plan and then you alter the plan, right? It's like you come up with the plan, but you can't be so schizophrenic that you don't execute on what you know. So some people, like, they take that and they're like, okay, so I'm working on this. Oh, drop, and then I'm working on this, and drop, I'm working on this. That's schizophrenic because you don't actually finish the thing. But if you come up with like a year plan and you're like, okay, first we're gonna do this project and this one and then this one, and you complete the first one, and then you totally do something other than what you planned for the next one, that's totally fine, because that became a higher priority thing, or you saw an opportunity there. It's just that you got to finish what you started, like complete the things. But that's how I think it makes a lot of sense, because you look at things and it's like, I mean, like you take, for example, like what we're doing with the podcast awards right now. We didn't plan on doing that, but we came up with the idea, and we're like, oh, well, you know, this has to be done before the end of the year if we're going to do it. And this has a huge potential to move the needle dramatically. So let's abandon what the current plan was, finish up what we were working on, and then get going on this thing. And so that's what we ended up doing. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So we tend to, I think we're pretty good about typically finishing what we start.
Yeah.
Or at least getting it. I mean, a lot of this stuff is never really finished, but we're pretty good about getting it to where we're, you know, it's reasonably complete. And before we move on, so we're not like wasting a lot of effort. But we have like basically we have this big pool of ideas, and we're kind of looking for the highest opportunity ideas as we come closer to the end of a project.
That makes sense. Yeah, I tend to do the 12-week year. Speaking of books I read this year. And,
that's Todd Herman.
No, it's.
It's Michael Hyatt.
Nope, it's not Michael Hyatt either.
Everyone's got
Tony Robbins, right?
I thought it was Todd Herman.
David Hyatt Robbins. No. David Allen. I'm trying to remember his name. Anyway, I'll get it in a minute because I'm looking at Audible right now. But anyway, it's just been very transformational for me. As far as, you know, so I just sit down and I plan out what I'm going to do over the next 12 weeks. And I can change the plan if I have to. But a lot of the stuff is pretty, it's pretty predictable for me. I have conferences coming up. It's Michael P. Moran and Michael Lennington.
Okay. Yeah, not familiar.
So, you know, so I can say, look, during this 12 weeks, I need to pull together these conferences, and I need to get these things started. And I'm working on this project, and that way I get all that stuff done. But I do it for my personal life as well, and it's been very, very helpful for me to just think about that, because then it's like anything else that comes up, it's like the next conference or whatever, you know, it's, well, I'm going to put that off right now, and I can deal with that in the next 12-week year.
Yep.
And that's been pretty nice. But I was curious because it seems like you guys get a lot done, and I was like, okay, well, how much planning goes into that, or is it just, this is the next great idea, we're just going to execute on that until we get it done? So
it's a little more like that.
Yeah, I'd say
the advantage of that is that your motivation can be pretty high, right? Because you're working on something that you're excited about.
Yeah, when you've got so much stuff that can move the ball forward, you've got to cherry pick the best stuff at the given time, I think. And there's also this interesting balance, I think, in all kinds of planning, because what you want to have a mix of things, right? Like you always want to have your stuff, your ongoing stuff that's long term, right? That's like because the thing is, like, well, for example, like take the YouTube videos. Right, I'm releasing 2 YouTube videos a day. Right, at first when I started doing that, we had like 1,000 subscribers or so, and it wasn't much, and it was like, okay, so we're getting $20 a month worth of revenue from that. Like, why are you even doing this? But over the year and a half or so that I've been doing that, now the subscriber count is at like 57 or 58,000, and there's $1,500 a month of AdSense revenue coming in from that. And so, but if you project that out like 5 years, or 3, even like 3 years, you can imagine that could become like $5,000-$6,000 a month. It could, so like plus whatever else. And now it's getting email subscribers and all this stuff. So it's like, I think you've got to have a mix. You've got to have some of that stuff, the long-term stuff, writing blog posts, like stuff that you're doing continually. And then you've got to have some stuff that gives you the opportunity to hit home runs, that you're not going to hit home runs all the time, but you're going to swing really hard. And then you've got to have some base hits where it's like, okay, this just makes sense, and this is going to move the needle forward, and we just got to get this done. But there's not a super high upside here, but it's going to, and so it's kind of hard, I think, to balance those things, because you've got to have all those things. Like, I think what we decided for this year, like as Josh and I were talking, we're like, okay, we're going to take this book that I just finished, and we're going to make that into like a home run, like an absolute, like we're going to take a shot at this. We're going to go for #1 spot on Amazon. And like, because if we do that, that has the potential to double the business, that one thing. So
so we're going to bet the farm on that for the first quarter. And John and I are going to pretty much put all of our time into making that thing a huge success.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess the other question I have for you guys, because some of the things that I'm thinking about this year are this and building my team. So I hired Grace on Upwork, and she's been doing a whole bunch of tasks for me, but I'm also looking at hiring this executive assistant. And I actually told Grace to apply because she's been doing a great job. But I'm realizing I'm going to need 2 people there, and it's probably going to grow as things go on. And so I'm also curious, just, how do you manage your team? Do you have some task tracking system that you work through? I know you guys have your DocuWiki that you put your procedures into and stuff. Do you have a Slack channel for Simple Programmer? I mean, how do you manage all the communication and stuff? And do you have like weekly meetings and stuff, or what?
So I think we're probably against the grain from most people on it, but I kind of like it. And I'll tell you what. So like, we have a Slack channel, and like, take for Rodrigo, for example, he's basically unmanaged, right? Like for the most part, like he knows what he's supposed to do every week. He's got a system for doing it. We've got enough tasks that it's kind of uniform, and then we throw him stuff every once in a while, like one-offs, and we'll just ask him in Slack to say, can you get this thing done? But we don't have any meetings with him, right? I've only talked to him on Skype one time, right? Basically all of my communication with him, and he's been working for me for over a year now, has been through Slack or email. Okay. And so like, the reason why I like that so much, even though people are like, oh, you got to have a meeting every week and FaceTime and all this, it's like, no, because there's, the more communication you have, like the more the more overhead you have. And so like, by keeping it, I like the guy, right? Don't get me wrong, but by keeping that distance, I feel like we're getting much better, because we're getting the efficiency without any of the overhead, basically. And we kind of do that with everything. Like, you know, our editor for Simple Programmer blog, Elisa, she's basically, the communication with her is she knows what she's supposed to do and she just does it. And very rarely does she even have anything that she has to come to us with. And then if we need something or we're scheduling a blog post specially, we just tell her on Slack. And then, you know, the same thing with the signing, like Aaron or who else do we got that?
Well, we have we have some people that we communicate. Like I have a guy that I communicate with, our designer Spiridon. I think, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. He's Greek, and but yeah, him I always communicate with through Upwork. It's probably about time to pull him into Slack.
That's true. Yeah, he could be. Yeah,
we've done a lot of work with him. But yeah, I've got Spiridon, and then I've got Dan, who is working with me now on the Sublime website, and he's actually kind of like, I don't really know how much time he's spending on that, but I've kind of given that to him. We're doing this product launch, but pretty much he knows what he's supposed to do. We tasked it all out in a Trello board, and he's just cranking through all the tasks in Trello, and then when he needs me to do something, he'll make a Trello card, tag me on it, and I'll jump over and, you know, usually what I try to do with him is record videos. So he'll write a draft of a sales page, and then he'll ask for feedback, and I'll do like a 20-minute video where I walk through it and talk about copywriting and stuff. And then he's like just like doing backflips with excitement over what he's learning. He's really excited about it, and it's very little oversight from me. The real key to this is you got to get the A+ players. I mean, we have just found everyone that we've agreed to work with has been an A+ player. And so if you can do that, you don't need the oversight. You can kind of turn them loose. You just need a clear project for them to work on. And a lot, we've siloed a lot of our stuff, so it's not very interdependent.
Right.
Exactly.
One thing we need to fix this year, I think, would be, I would like to have a little bit better of a promotional calendar. So like maybe 6 months out, we know kind of where we're going to be promoting different things, because Elisa, like I keep doing this fire drill thing with Elisa, our content manager, where I'm like, hey, I need this blog post published tomorrow. Is that a problem? She grits her teeth. No, it's fine. So I need to fix that.
Yeah.
There's really no excuse for that. But yeah, other than that, everything, like if you can divide it up into roles that are pretty independent, then you don't need the whole team meeting idea. I think it would be useful to have some sort of overview, like bird's eye view that everyone could look at to see what was going on. But as far as, you know, like we don't really feel the need to meet. John and I meet once a week. For just to kind of go over our projects and stuff, but other than that,
I'm thinking about doing something kind of on a Scrum basis, but I don't know if I want to do like actual stand-up meetings where everybody gets on the call, or if I just want a Slack channel where it's like, look, check in when you start working.
I would tend to, as much as Scrum is, you know, effective at software development, I would tend to.
I just want to know what they're working on, what they got done the day before, and if they're stuck on something, so that I can just unstick them.
But if they're A players, you probably don't even need that, right? Because they're going to be, first of all, they're going to be unsticking themselves 90% of the time, and they'll be coming to you when they absolutely need the help. Yeah. So like, if you have to, my just, you know, my thing is like, if I have to monitor you, I have to fire you. Right. And that's not always the case in every business, but it's sort of like that. It's like, you know, because that's not the team that I want. You know, again, I could see businesses where that's not the case, but I shouldn't have to monitor you. Like, if you're out of work, you should be coming to me. Like, you know, I always think of it this way. It's like, you should be doing what I would do in the situation or better, right? It's like, because I think to myself, I'm like, okay, well, if someone had hired me to do this and I was running out of work, what would I go and do? I know what I would do. I would come up with some suggestions for things I could do for them, and then email them and say, or do you have something else, right? And if so in my mind, if someone doesn't do that, well, then they're not the person I want on the team.
Couple of thoughts.
My thing is mostly just that I want to know what's going on. Like, I want to be on top of things. Like, I don't have to know exactly what they're doing or anything like that, but just seeing progress every day makes me relax.
Trello is a really good tool for that, because
you
can basically have different boards. So we have all these independent boards, and so the content team, they work off of their own board. Rodrigo has this video board that he collaborates with John on, and then if you're a member of all these boards, you can just hit the updates button and you can literally just see everything getting, you can see, okay, so-and-so dragged this card to done. And so it kind of like gives you this you can scan through that and see kind of what's moving, and you can go to the boards and see what they're working on. But
I've been using Asana, and you can do the same thing. That makes sense.
Scrum is I think Scrum is interesting because what we have is Scrum is for a development team, right? We don't have a development team. We have a company. We have an entire company. If you think about it, how many companies do Scrum across their entire company, where the accountants and the bookkeepers get together with the software development team, and and they bring in the CEO, and that doesn't happen. It's a bunch of people working on very interrelated tasks, and a lot of times towards a common goal, which is completely different. It would be more like if John and I put together a one-time kind of book launch team, and we have we're just working like crazy to get this book launched, and we're all waiting on things from each other. It might make sense at that point to do something where it's like a daily 5-minute Scrum.
Yeah, that makes sense. My thing though is, I have a few friends that are doing Scrum for their business. They're not software businesses again. And so that's kind of where I got the idea. And I really like the idea of just having that daily accountability, even for A players, because then it's, tomorrow I have to go in and, I have to justify my existence once again. I mean, it's not that deep. I'm not going to fire them if they don't get enough done. But at the same time, it's, okay, well, what am I doing today? And just make them think about it so that it gets done.
I guess,
and then have to check in.
Yeah. So one of the things I think that makes it so that we don't need that, and that I've always thought about for hiring, is that I don't hire someone unless I have regular work for them that is repeatable, schedulable, audit, where they become basically an automation for the system. And so if you look at Rodrigo, it's he sends me a weekly report every week, right? And he tells me what he did, but in general, he's got a quota. He has to produce the YouTube videos every week, and the podcast episodes, and all these things, and answer the emails. And so there's not I don't need to ask him what he did. I mean, he sends me the weekly report, but if that stuff gets done, he's good. If it doesn't get done, there's a problem. And I think the same thing with our editor, with Elisa, she's got her team, and she's got the responsibility of getting the blog posts out. And if those get done, they get done, right? And it's it's each one of those, the more roles you can have like that, where it's if you hire someone for capacity, I think then you have that problem, because capacity changes, right? So you've got to kind of have people that repeatable tasks. And how can you make tasks that are repeatable, that have quotas every week, so that you can keep a person, not just busy, but where you don't need that, that extra layer of overhead. That's what I think. Because we could hire more general people, I think, and we could have had more hands on deck. And that's where we're looking at, when we've got potential, we need a project manager. But with the project manager, I think we'd have a Trello board with 50 ideas to pick from. Pick which one you like and start working on that. And and so there'll always be something. Because if someone has to justify their existence, then it's bad. Like there's no one's ever going to fail that who would be like that same person that's smart enough that you would hire is going to figure out a way to do it. And that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it, just trying to figure out what the trade-offs are, but yeah.
Yeah, it might make sense to do some form of that type, like, with, because you have some like silos in your business, like you've got the conferences that are, the summits or whatever that are pretty independent from everything else that you're doing.
Well, even within the podcast, there's the editing and production is one silo, and the sponsorships is another silo.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
And the guest onboarding could be another silo, because I mean, honestly, it's one thing to get them to show up, and it's another thing to, anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, again, I'm going against the grain on traditional, business management practices, but I like siloing. I think it's great. I think you're disconnecting the interdependencies, and that decreases overhead, and you're making an interchangeable part more so, as cruel as it is to say, but if you're hiring there's a difference between doing that and hiring A players and not hiring A players. So
that's true. Well, and I'm looking to hire A players. I mean, I want people who are going to go in and say, who are going to take some initiative, right?
Yeah.
And then, so if the procedure says to do it one way, the procedures are another way of, creating those silos, right? Because you don't have to understand. It helps if you understand the entire process, but if you're going to follow the checklist, you're probably going to do it right or close to right. And so, but for me, the checklists are more just to make sure that we got everything done, so I don't have to remember it, and you don't have to remember it.
Right.
But it makes each piece, we're onboarding a guest. Boom, we just do all these things.
Yeah. For Chuck, in your case with the personal assistant, that's pretty different too. And I would imagine, John, for you, when you get to that point, that's somebody that you probably would meet with every day, because they're going to be, or, in some way you check in with them every day, because you're going to be delegating a lot of one-off stuff to them, I would imagine, that has a little bit of context to it that you need to set.
Yeah. I think even with that, see, one of the reasons why I've been reluctant to hire a personal assistant is I want to make sure that I have a baseline of work, at least like 10 to 15 hours a week worth of repeatable stuff every week. Yeah. And I think that probably would be answering my email, like switching that off from Rodrigo to this person. But I feel like there needs to be a little bit more, because again, even with that, like, I'm very hesitant to just hire someone that I don't have. And one of the things too is like that I found is like I never want to be in the position where I'm scrambling to figure out what to assign people to do, because that's just a waste of my time and a waste of their time. Like, and it creates more work for me and stress. So it's like I have to, in order for me to hire someone, I have to know ahead of time what they're going to do. And it has to be obvious, and it has to be kind of like planned out, like I said, in a systematic way. Otherwise, because I've been in that position where I'm like, okay, well, I wonder what I should assign this person to work on. Let me see, what can I, and then I'm digging around for like 3 hours, coming up with a half an hour chunk of work for them to do. Yeah. And so I've spent 3 hours of my time giving them a half-hour assignment, and you're like, oh, what am I doing here? So that's. But yeah, I think with that kind of role, you might check in more often. I don't know. Again, this is all all theoretical until you do it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that we'll grind through it and figure it out. One last thing that I'm trying to figure out is one thing I do want to do in the process once I've got them through the in-depth interview, and I'm like, this is somebody I could actually hire and be happy with, is I want to give them a test project. And I know you guys have been big on that, but I am drawing a blank on what I should hand off to them.
So, what are you? All right.
For what role?
Yeah, this is for the executive assistant role. Yeah.
For what is it?
It's executive assistant.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I would start with something. I would just pick. It doesn't have to be anything meaningful. Maybe that's where you're getting hung up. Like, pick something that you've done. Pick something that you have already done.
Yeah.
And make them do it again. Don't tell them that. But that way you've got a baseline, and have three people, all of them do basically the same task.
Yep.
But it can't involve contacting someone, because that would be obvious.
Yeah,
but
that's part of my hang up, is a lot of what I want them to do is contact people. But I think
you can.
So the big thing that I want them to do is write a standard operating procedure kind of thing, because I'm going to push a lot of that stuff their way. Look, here's my template for standard operating procedures. I need one for this, 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 and this. I've shown you how to do it. Go do it.
Do a video.
Yeah.
Do a video where you walk through some process, even if it's one that you've already documented. Just pick something that's like relatively easy to understand for somebody who's not hip deep in your business. And then record a video, a 5 or 10 minute video, where you click through the thing for them, tell them, explain all the steps, and then have them write it up for you.
I have some of those already that I've done for how I post conferences and stuff. So
there you go.
That's a really good idea.
So yeah, the video thing is great. I basically, all of my communication now with our team is mostly via video, because it's a waste of time typically to get on the phone, and I can just sit there for 10 or 15 minutes and go through what they've done, and and just like free associate. I'm like, what I tell them is that, like, all right, get something to take notes, because this is just going to be a lot, and I'll just I'll just stream of consciousness, and it works. You can get a lot. Like, if you sit there and spend the time putting it into writing too, it takes a lot of your time.
Yeah.
So. And have them track.
I really like that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And don't tell them how long it should take. Don't tell them how long they have. You basically, especially if it's something you've done before, because I did this when I was doing podcast editing. I was like, I know how long. Like, I was editing my own podcasts and publishing them for a while. And then when I was hiring people on Upwork, and I would give them the task of re-editing the same podcast that I did and the instructions, someone took 8 hours and someone took 1.5 hours, and it was like. And then you can look at the quality of the work versus how long it's supposed to take, and because that's the thing, is like, sometimes it might be worth paying someone. It took you 1 hour, but it took them 3 hours, but the end result was like 10 times better. Yeah. Sure, yeah. Now it's worth it. So you can't just judge it by the hour. But if you have all of those data points, and you know how much they're charging, then it's like, now you can make a real good decision.
Yeah. The other thing I like to do is I try not to telegraph. I mean, I think this ship has sailed in this case, because it's the way that you're going through the hiring process, and that's fine. But a lot of times what I try to avoid telegraphing my intentions. Like, when I'm auditioning people, I don't tell them that I'm auditioning them, because I don't want them to be on their best behavior.
Right.
I want them to, I want them to screw me now. If there's someone that screws me, I want them to do it now, not in 3 months after I've hired them and trained them. I don't want, I want them to screw up as fast as possible. So I will actually deliberately give a little bit less. Like, I'll deliberately sometimes omit information. Like, I'll never say there's more work where this came from, or if you do a good job on this, I've got a lot more. Because that's, like, for one thing, that's a classic line that everybody uses with freelancers to try to get them to lower their prices. So I, just out of respect, I try not to do that.
But this is part of a hiring process ongoing. So they know there's more work, and they know it's going to be a task. But I agree that in this case, it's you kind of know, or they kind of know, but but still. And how much should I pay him for the task? Or should I pay him for the task?
I would pay him what they ask. That's part of the thing. So whatever their hourly rate is, you pay them their hourly rate. You ask them what their hourly rate is, and you pay them the hourly rate, and then you basically don't limit the hours, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how, I mean, you learn a lot. You learn about integrity from that, and work ethic, right? Because And also, you never want to really negotiate someone's hourly rate. You never want to negotiate it down because you're going to get what you pay for. Like I never, like I negotiate prices of products. I never negotiate services because I want someone performing at what they think they're worth, right? And so, you know, and when I did the video editing, when I was hiring Rodrigo, like there were people that were billing like $60 an hour, and you know, and they would do the video editing, and I mean, it was a range from like $8 an hour to 60. That their rate doesn't mean anything by itself, but when you combined all those data points, and I was like, okay, well, this person charged me $60 an hour and they took 5 hours, so I paid this person $300, but this other person charged $10 an hour and they did it in like 2 hours, so I paid them $20
right
for the same work, but that $10 an hour person did a better job, right? So, but it may be the case that the $60 an hour person is so much better that it's worth paying that amount of money. So I would just like let it, you know, just pay them whatever their hourly rate is, let them, because that's a good experiment, and then see what happens. And then you'll be able to take that data, like you'll know with that much data, you'll be like, okay, look, this is what I ended up paying for this. This is the result that they produced. This is how long it took them. And, you know, and you'll be able to tell, because if you've got the worst thing that you could possibly have is the really highly expensive person that has no integrity. And so not only are they the highest hourly rate, but they're charging the most hours. That's the worst combination. You want to find that out right away, and you want to give them enough rope to hang themselves. You know, it'll cost you some money up front, but that'll be better, because if you have a sandbagging person who's smart and is good at hiding how much they're sandbagging you, and they're on your team, they're like a drag weight. You're paying a lot of extra money. You won't even know it. So let them hang themselves from the very beginning.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. I like it. Sorry, I kind of took over with my questions, but these are things that I'm fighting with right now. So
no, it's all cool. All right, I guess we should probably wrap it up. It's funny now that we've gone to the hour, we're like, ooh, more time.
Yep.
We should do real quick two things though. The one being the podcast awards. Go vote on those, or I think there'll still be time to vote, right, Josh?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Voting is for round 1 is through December 31st. So
I need to send an email out to my email list.
Cool. Yeah, I would appreciate that if you, or yeah. And maybe
I want them to go vote for me. I'm not doing it for you.
Well, that's kind of we're trying to harness self-interest here, Chuck. So
yeah. And I don't know if you have I don't know if you have any episodes that'll make it in the window, but you could always mention that to vote for your podcast on there.
There will be, by the way, there will be a round 2 in early January. So that could be. I imagine you're going to make the cut. At least one of your podcasts will make the cut.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the Entreprogrammers subgroups. So I think I set up a PayPal pay button. I sent out the email and everything. I'm looking in PayPal right now to see how many people have paid. It looks like all the groups have their logos and stuff. So I think we're ready to start in January. I created YouTube channels for all of them. I created Libsyn accounts for all of them. I only see 3 people that have paid. Is that really true?
Our conversion rate.
This is, and they all paid on the same day. Okay, so those of you listening out here that are part of the group,
you are.
Yeah, make sure that you get your pay on this subscription thing so that we can do this and get this going. But I think everything is pretty much handled. Like the only remaining thing will be once there's a few episodes to get it on iTunes. We probably want to take our little Entreprogrammers logo and like make it like a part of their logo, you know what I mean? Like a brought to you by Entreprogrammers or something like that.
Because our logo is not detailed and busy, and so shrunk down, it should work great.
No, just the top part of it, just the like, just the word mark kind of part of it. You know what I mean? That
yeah.
And I think that then it should get going, because Eric's got, I think, everything that he needs to get editing on their episodes. There's really not going to be much. I think he's pretty much not really going to even edit them. I think he'll probably just be putting them up on YouTube and on the podcast on Libsyn. So
sweet,
good deal.
Anything I'm missing that you guys can think of?
Nope. It's been fun to chat with some of these folks on Slack.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. Like this, I watched some of the groups, episodes, and it's awesome. It's great. Like this is going to be.
I haven't had time, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be really good, but we got to get everyone. We got to get it rolling first. This is the challenge. So.
Yep.
Thoughts?
Thoughts. I have a thoughts. My thought is basically it comes out of this whole process of hiring an executive assistant. I was at the point where I was like, I don't have time for anything. And so I started the process of hiring an executive assistant. And now I really don't have time for anything because all I'm doing is hiring stuff, right? But the thing is that by making this so that I'm not at the center of all of the activity that has to happen at devchat.tv, I'm looking forward to the time when the conferences more or less organize themselves, meaning that I have somebody that's doing a lot of the stuff that I don't have to be involved in. And the podcast's the same thing, right? So then I can spend my time working on the projects I want to work on, like the book, or, I have a video series on Ruby on Rails that I've been wanting to revive for a while, and stuff like that. And then, so I can focus on creating the content, which is what I enjoy doing. And then all of the other minutia can be handled by somebody else. And I can still only put in a reasonable amount of time instead of working, 50 or 60 hour weeks, trying to get all of the things done. And so, it's there's this short-term pain, which is the amount of time that I'm spending doing phone screenings and then working late to make up for the time that I spent on the phone. And just, I mentioned it before, but I think I have like 4 hours scheduled today, one in-depth interview and then a whole bunch of phone screenings. But at the same time, I can't move forward the way I'm going. And so you look at those trade-offs and you make a trade-off now for the payoff in the future. And, I think that's a lot of what being an adult is. I think that's a lot of what being a business person is, if I eat the cookie now and then I'm going to put on the weight and I'm going to have a heart attack when I'm 50 instead of, taking care of myself and living till I'm 70, 80, 90 or whatever. And it's the same thing with the business, right? You can keep moving at a breakneck speed by yourself, but eventually you're going to hit that wall. Your health is going to give out. You're just not going to have enough time to do all the things in your business, and it's going to cost you something. And so if you can see where you can make the payment now to gain that flexibility in the future, that's the big payoff.
Yep, I totally agree. I was at that point like about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, and I had gone too far down the road without doing what you're saying. So.
Yep. Well, and I think that just shows you can recover from it, but it probably isn't much fun.
So I've got a lesson in learning that I'm in the process of learning. I can't relax. So I think that I talked about this before, but having unrealistic expectations, it's like I'm not totally going to be taking the day off ever, right? It's like just not, maybe one day, like you could, but in general, I've been setting incorrect expectations, and that's where it becomes actually stressful to relax. And so I think what you have to do is you have to set realistic expectations. So it's like, okay, I'm going to answer email, so I have to answer email. So I've got one more week that I'm kind of going to try and relax before the new year. And I think what I'm going to try and do for that week is I'm going to say, okay, have a cutoff time, and basically like say, okay, instead of saying, okay, I'm taking the week off, to say, okay, I'm up until like 10 a.m. I'm going to get an email done, and that's it. Right. And that's, you know, in any kind of emergencies that have to be put out. And then after that, that's it. And then have the rest of the day. So I don't know. It's tough. Like I said, I haven't figured this out. So, but I have figured out that if you don't have, you know, and this always happens, right? If the one way to ensure stress, procrastination, demotivation is to have to have a bar that you can't reach. So you always have to make sure that whatever you're doing, even if it's recreation, that the bar is like that. You don't have more on your to-do list than you can do, you know, that it's always, you know, and if you do, you have to stop and replan and come up with a new plan. So, yeah,
I guess I'll piggyback off of that, and I'm going to try to take some time off next week. And the only thing honestly, like for me, if I just try to relax, quote unquote, I end up more tired and stressed out than if I just worked. Because like when you enjoy working, then not working, you're constantly thinking about how you need to not be working, and you're in this mindset where you're like, you know, I need to be enjoying this time, right? Like, and you're like beating yourself up because you're not enjoying the time. So the only thing that works for me is to have multiple channels of things that I'm working on at any given time, and to switch channels. And that's refreshing when you switch tracks and you're like, there's something else that you can obsess for. I have an obsessive personality. So if I'm not obsessing about work, I need to have something else that will take my brain off of work that I can kind of put my focus onto. And so like for me, like on the weekends, I kind of switch gears, and I start reading. I've been, you know, working on this gymnastics fitness stuff for a while, and I just kind of, I switch gears and I kind of like start thinking about that, and I work on, you know, it's very technical. So I like read up on the different moves that I'm trying to learn, and what I'm doing wrong and all that stuff. And that works well for me. But when I take this time off next week, I think I'm actually going to plan on having a pretty full day of working around the house, of like, cause I have all this stuff, like our garage. I got rid of a bunch of storage in our garage because I was trying to force myself to slim down on the stuff that I had out there. So I just have this pile of stuff on my workbench that's been driving me crazy for like a year. So that's going to be, that might be one of my goals, just to like, you know, get that organized and like work on organizing the attic and that sort of thing. But like for me, just trying to do nothing, utter failure. It does not work.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm debating between that. Like I thought about what you're talking about, Josh, and I decided to not do that because that was my initial, but I don't know. I'm curious to see how it works out for you. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. The other thing for me is that we have a fairly small house and we have 3 kids. So for me, if I'm not working, then I'm basically getting pummeled by them all day. And like, which is my wife's job. And I feel very, very bad about that. But so for me, like if I'm not doing something constructive, then I basically am just, you know, they're very active. And so I'm kind of like, and for me to immerse myself in that environment is extremely stressful. So
right.
It's not like I can just hole up in my cave and read. That would actually be relaxing, but
yeah. Well, you know, maybe next year we'll go to a day spa.
Yeah, you guys should go get mani-pedis.
It's a business meeting, sweetie, I swear. I have to go, John says.
Well, I mean, this is something that I've been talking to my wife for a while, and it's a concept that Rob Walling and his wife Sherry talk about, and that's the personal retreat. Yeah, and I have been talking to my wife to try and get one scheduled for myself and one scheduled for her. You know, sometime around the beginning of the year, and then one sometime during the summer. And it's mainly, you know, to kind of get that clarity, but yeah, just to get some time away where it is because, you know, my wife and I are both the kind of people where if we go away for a few days and just have some quiet time to figure things out and then to just relax, shows, read a book or something, we come back very, very recharged.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm playing with it again, and I think it's seasonal too, based on the seasons of your life and where you're at. And it's like, because sometimes I go and I'm like, okay, well, just working, like work is life and life is work, and that's sometimes a good philosophy and flow to have, because then you don't have this problem. But then sometimes like you can, I don't know, having a few days or holding yourself back. And like, as I'm learning to become a better runner, I've also found that you have to hold yourself back a lot in order to be able to recover, in order to be able to push the maximum effort. So like I started doing, like last week, like a couple of weeks, I was doing heart rate running, where I was running at like 12-minute miles, 12.5-minute miles, to keep my heart rate low, like in this ridiculously low zone. And I'm like, man, I'm losing all my training. And then just this Tuesday, I ran like 16.2 miles, and I ran the whole thing at a 9-minute mile pace. I was just in the last like 3 or 4 miles, I did 8-minute mile pace, which is like insane, like super, super fast for me, at least. And I realized it was because I had held myself back for, so
when I was on the swim team in high school, we used to call that tapering. And we would, the 2 weeks before the regional and state meets, our workouts, we would go through the motions, but we wouldn't push.
Yeah.
And then at the state meet, our glycogen stores had built up, and all of the other things had worked out. We didn't lose any conditioning, but we had all the energy because we were well rested and well prepared.
And there's multiple paths to it too, right? Like, because there's some, even like looking at the running training literature, some people are like, okay, just get a lot of mileage in and don't train it hard, like do like one hard train per week or something. And then there's also marathon training programs where people are like, every single workout you train 100% as hard as you can, and you get a maximum. And both actually lead to the same place. Like both end up getting people prepared and very, very fast for a marathon. Is they're two different routes. And so I think like in life, you've got that too. And you can choose either path too, right? Because I've done points where I've taken no breaks and I've just hit it hard. And then when I felt exhausted, I hit it harder, and that gave me more energy. And I've had places where so I think that, again, I don't have the exact formula for this, but I think you can. I think what's most important is you pick the path and you execute that path. That's what, like, if you say, okay, I'm just going to work through the holidays, and I'm just going to like my life is going to be my work, and I'm going to work, and I'm not going to worry about taking time off. I'm just going to pick things that excite me and keep on going. Then you do that, and you don't think about, I should be taking time off, or right. You just live the life that way, at least at that time. And then the same thing, if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take a retreat or I'm going to take a break, then you do that. It's when you're not doing what you're planning to do, that's when like the stress, I don't know. That's my theory. It's evolving. All right. Cool. Same time next week.
Yep.
That'll be the last episode of the year, will it? I think
it will.
Yes.
It will.
Yep.
All right, guys.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
I actually think this episode will be the last released episode of the year, and next week will be the last one we record of the year. So,
yep.
All right. Well, then, Merry Christmas to everyone. Actually,
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. All right.
Yeah, this comes out after Christmas. Bye.
See ya.
You guys.
Wanna start a business, but you just know how to code. Listen to John, Josh, and Derek as we figure it out.